This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, we're the ones who've always encouraged you all along to like and share them on social media and with all your friends and neighbors, because Martin County Roofing and Rudy's Health Insurance bring you at this time and every week at this time the African American scene. In fact, here's your host right now, the one and only Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Always glad to be with you here on a Wednesday night. Wow, wow, wow. Indictment number 4. I know some of you are chomping at the bit to get after me about that. And we are going to talk about that if you so desire. And you know the number is 340-1590. But first of all, let me introduce you to something new on the African American scene. We're going to have a weekly trivia segment called Black Facts, sponsored by the Cartwright Firm, specializing in car and truck accidents, personal injury cases, police misconduct, wrongful death, civil rights violations, discrimination, sports and entertainment, and business litigation. Write down this number for Black Facts Trivia Contest. You will need to text your answer to this number. That's 772-349-1407. So you text your answer to that number, and what happens is you will get a gift card to Dunkin' Donuts. Here is the first question. Name the African American surgeon who pioneered methods of storing blood plasma for transfusion and organized the first large-scale blood bank in the U.S. Also advised the fraternity to which he was a member. Again, that number is 772-349-1407. And if you are successful, you have to give the answer to Mr. Cartwright. He will give you a Dunkin' Donuts gift card. How about that? Another new thing here for the African American scene. We're always trying to be better. Now, let me give you again the phone number to call in, because I know some of you really are probably chomping at the bit to talk about this fourth indictment. That phone number is 340-1590. Before we get to that, I'm going to try to once again revisit the Electoral College. If you listen to me for any length of time, you know this is one of the issues that is near and dear to my heart. 5 times in our history, the presidential candidate that won the popular vote lost the election. That's due to the Electoral College. Now, what I want to do is give you the history of the Electoral College. And I hope when I give you this history, you will understand how it is not relevant, it's not relevant for today, and was never designed to deal with today's political environment. And I am convinced, and I have been for quite some time, that the Electoral College is an integral part of why we are so tribal. And I hope as I provide you with these details, you'll understand why I say that, and you'll come to the same conclusion. The Constitutional Convention of 1787 was held so that they could determine how to elect the president. Some members thought Congress should do it. Others thought that a democratic popular vote would be the best way to do it. So what came out of the convention was the electoral college, which is a compromise. The electoral college was a compromise. Let's talk about what it is. Every 4 years, a group of temporary electors are designated, which equal the total number of congressional representatives in that area, in that state. These are the people that actually vote for president. And to be president, you have to win 270 electoral votes. Now, understand, this system was created out of frustration because you had two opposites. You had those pulling for congressional election and those that were pulling for a popular election. So this electoral college, which I think is terrible, was a compromise due to the frustration they were having trying to come to some agreement on the electoral process for president. At the time, there was a deep distrust of executive power. I guess that's pretty clear to understand since we had just broken away from the shackles of England. And they did not want to see themselves in a situation where one person was the overseer for the entire state. Those that opposed the popular vote felt that in the 18th century, voters lacked resources to be fully informed. I think that is a thoughtful and reasonable and logical conclusion about the environment as it existed in the 18th century. So the electors, was the compromise that would allow for people who in all manner of understanding about the political issues of the day were more informed and better able to make a prudent decision about who should be the president. And it just for commentary purposes, I agree that made sense at that time. Now, here's one of the major stumbling blocks that took place. Trying to determine who the electors would be. Now, what went on here is you had the slave states in conflict with the non-slave states. In 1787, 40% of the people living in the South were Black. Think about that, 40%. In Virginia, in 1787, 60% of the citizens in the state of Virginia were Black. So now here's where this whole electoral process gets to be pretty complicated. Blacks were not allowed to vote, but due to the rather large Black population in the South, there would be a tendency to skew the amount of electors to the South because they had a larger population when counting the slaves, which to me is a real oxymoron because at that time, they were not considered people. They were considered property. But nevertheless, that battle went on. And I certainly can understand the concerns of the people from the North, as well as I understood the concerns of people from the South. So what did they come up with? They came up with, again, that phone number, if you want to call, is 340-1590. 340-1590. They came up with the 3/5 compromise. Many of you have heard about that, and you probably didn't know exactly what it is or what it was. So let me tell you. What that meant was that 3/5 of the slave population would be counted toward allocating electors. Okay. Now, in other words, as you have heard many civil rights people talk about, Black people were counted as 3/5 of a human being. And you will hear all kinds of fancy explanations that attempt to avoid the fact that Black people were counted as 3/5 of a human being, but none of them work because that is what it is, that Black people were 3/4 of a human being. Now, here's the real interesting part. I'm sure some of you never even thought about this. In 1787, there were no political parties. So this electoral process that they were designing and debating over was an electoral process that did not involve parties. The original thought was that all electors' votes would be counted. Today, all but 2 states require electors to vote for the party's candidate. The exceptions are Maine and Nebraska. In Maine and Nebraska, the electors have some freedom. So now, when I tell you that, can you see the birth of where this becomes a problem? Now you got the electors that are assigned by virtue of the party designation. And I say this is an issue for both sides, because I am firmly convinced, beyond the shadow of a doubt, if we could get rid of this monstrous thing called the Electoral College, it would do a great deal to bridge the gap that divides us as people. There is now, today, no elector independence other than in the states of Maine and Nebraska, as I said. Under the original process developed in the Constitutional Convention, if no candidate wins the majority of the electors, the decision goes to the House. Now that we have moved this to the point where electors have to pledge to vote for the party's candidate, that really does not make for a situation that could come about. Now, one of the reasons why I'm telling you about this is I know some of you are really upset that Trump is involved in all this litigation and all of his trouble. And what I want to tell you is that his troubles would not be there if we did not have the Electoral College, because it was the Electoral College that he was trying to manipulate, or is allegedly, let me make that statement, allegedly was trying to manipulate. So in the absence of the Electoral College, he probably would have less headaches for sure. But as it stands now, he's got his fourth indictment, and his popularity, to my surprise, is growing stronger among the Republican Party. And one can only speculate as to why that is. And we have a caller on line one. Yes, Jay. Yes, Jay.
Respect you. Yeah, how you doing?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, no, the topic you're on is very important, because I've been thinking about it all weekend. Since I was watching the DA down in Georgia do her, perform her job as a DA. She's very professional, and last name is Miss Willis. And I think that she's going to have her hands full, but she seems to be. She reminds me so much of some people that I met throughout the course of my life that left impressions with me as being no nonsense. Seems like I'm attracted to people that deal with the facts and no nonsense, get the job done, don't fool around with it. It's not about black or white. It's about who's the professional in the room.
Yep.
And that's what I kind of like. I like that. I like what how she presented. And, she's going to have a lot of opposition, but there's a lot of knuckleheads out there that don't even know anything about what's going on, and they just think that he has a right to break the law, and all of his people following behind him, they think that they can get away with it because he's been doing it all his life. So I guess that's part of the MO. That's the MO with Donald Trump. And they just go in there. They're going to go down that rabbit hole with him. And it's looking kind of sad, but I'm not sorry for them, because they're grown men and they're probably rich. They got rich fooling around with him. And so I wouldn't feel sorry for him or for them or their family if they go down with him. and they should, all of them, all 19 of them, you know. But they're going to plead it out, and they're going to give up information. A lot of them are going to run like rats. They're going to run like rats because they're scared and they don't want to go to jail. So they're going to give up information, and that's just the way I see it from my point of view, watching and listening to what's going on with this case with Donald Trump and all of the stuff. And when you were talking about the electoral college, that's the weakness in it with what they just did. They almost pull off one of the biggest heists in America.
Yes, they did.
They almost pull off one of the biggest heists in America because of the weakness in the voting process that we have. We haven't even strengthened our voting process. We have the opportunity to do it, but we're sitting around wringing our hands, worrying about Trump and what he's going to do next, instead of correcting and changing the voting pattern and make it where every living soul in America votes counts. And we take the total of every American in this country's vote and then take the tally, and whoever comes out on top is the winner. And that's the way it should be. Thanks a lot for taking my call, man.
Okay, Jay, thank you for calling. Think about what he said. From the time we start school, the vote for class president, the vote for your local city representatives, all of those votes are done by majority. The only vote in this country that's not done by majority is the president. Now, you will have conservatives who will absolutely defend the Electoral College as a legitimate means of electing a president. But that will never be me. I will never defend that, because I will talk to you more about that, but I'm going to take a little break. But before I take this break, I want to reiterate, tonight is the first time we are having Black Facts, which is sponsored by the Cartwright Firm. And the question for tonight is, name the African-American surgeon who pioneered methods of storing blood plasma for transfusion and organized the first large-scale blood bank in the U.S. And tell me the fraternity to which he was a member. And if you know the answer to that phone number is 772-349-1407. Text your answer to Mr. Cartwright, and you can win yourself a Dunkin' Donuts gift card.
And we'll be right back with more of this week's edition of the African American Scene.
Hi, this is Rudy Howard. On August 19th, the 14th annual Omega Sci-Fi Scholarship Golf Tournament will be held at St. Lucie Trails Golf Club with a 9 a.m. shotgun start. Over the past 13 years, they have provided over $150,000 in scholarships. This is a nonpartisan event. All are welcome to join. The fee for golf is $100 per player. Sponsorships are available at all levels. All payments will be made payable to OT 1911 Inc., which is a 501c3. There will be $10,000 prize for a hole-in-one on number 2. There are still some openings for players, but it is filling up fast. Sponsorships are available at all levels. They are also seeking gift contributions for auctions and door prizes. For more information, you can contact Michael Green, 772-216-7589. That's 772-216-7589. See you on August 19th.
At Martin County Roofing, they build trust with quality work. With over 20 years of experience, they handle repairs, restoration, and new roofs for residential and commercial properties. serving the entire Treasure Coast area. They're fully licensed, bonded, and insured, specializing in tile, metal, shingle, or flat roofs. Let them protect what matters most to you. Contact Martin County Roofing for a free estimate at www.martincountyroofing.com.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
And now we return to the African American scene with the one and only Rudy Howard.
Okay, so why do we still use this system that is awkward and problematic? Well, because it would take a constitutional amendment. And to change the system, it would require a 2/3 majority of Congress and ratified by 3/4 of all the states. That's a big hurdle. I do think it is one worth trying to accomplish. Based on what I've just told you about the Electoral College, can you see why the system is outdated and leads to this tribal mentality we all are trapped in? Can you see how that leads to this? Why we are so divided and each one of us are in our own camps? Because it allows a candidate to campaign to only one segment of the population. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. If the process was open, you would have to make an appeal to all members of society. For example, one of the things that I have had conservatives tell me, no, if that happened, California and New York would dominate everything. No. There's Republicans in California, there's Republicans in New York. So they are able to convey a message to their region, district, that allows them to get elected. But just think about if everybody had to do that, if you had to do that, and I'm saying this for Democrats too, if you had to go out and solicit votes across the board from Democrats, Republicans, and independents, we're all better off. Because now you can't do a niche where you are just playing to that niche. And that's what gets us into these social shenanigans like what DeSantis does, because he's playing to a specific segment of the population. Now, I think we've gotten worse over the years, and this is my opinion and nobody else's. I think it started with the election of President Obama. I think after the election of President Obama, there is a segment of the population that decided that that was never going to happen again. Now, I have people tell me, "Oh, you're wrong, Rudy. That's not so." Look at Tim Scott. He's out there. Yeah, Tim Scott's out there. But that situation is, in my opinion, what was the trigger to part of the divide we have today. So now we have cultural wars that go on as a means to try to attract voters who are in your niche. And some of the wars, to me, are just flat out stupid. I don't know why our governor would pick a fight with Disney. Disney is one of the largest employers in the state of Florida. Why? What is the point of that? First off, and here's something that I'm sure some of you conservatives don't even know. The thing that he got mad at Disney for was some legislation he already passed. He had already passed the legislation. He got mad because Disney dared to criticize him. And who the hell is he that he can't be criticized? You know, it's been said that if you criticize him on the radio, you could get yourself in trouble. Well, you know, I obliviate that rule on a regular basis. If I think he's done something that makes no sense, I will continue to speak about it. This is my forum on Wednesday nights where I try to provide service to the community and provide you with knowledge about issues that you hadn't thought about. And he's not going to stop me from doing that unless he puts me in jail. So there we have it. I would like to think, I would like to hear from you. 340-1590, what's your feeling about the Electoral College? Now, here's one of the other things that I hear from the right. They say eliminating the Electoral College disadvantages the small states. Well, I disagree with that too. And when it comes to California and New York having an outsized influence on the election, it is as it should be. Let me show you why. California provides $234,499,000 in federal taxes. You hear that? $234,499,671 in federal taxes. That is bigger than some countries. New York provides $140,510,000 in federal taxes. Texas provides $133,417,081 in federal taxes. And Florida, $116,970,551. Now, okay, so who do you think is providing the money for infrastructure programs, roads, bridges, and airports? Who do you think? Which state do you think is providing most of that money? Here's what Tennessee puts in the federal coffers: $24,585,104. $24 billion versus $234 billion. Now, I think the system that is designed contemplated some sensitivity to smaller states. And the reason I say that is, while each state's congressional districts are adjusted and readjusted based on population, each state gets 2 senators. There's 2 senators in Vermont and 2 senators in California. Does that really, do you think that's fair? That's our system, though. And I'm willing to say, okay, that is part of how they tried to make an adjustment by making every state have 2 senators. Now, I think when you look at it from that perspective, the Senate is the deliberative body and can interfere or support very key pieces of legislation and very key very key policies. So I think when you think about Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, they all have 2 senators. There's cities in California bigger than South Dakota and North Dakota. Washington, D.C. is bigger than the state of Wyoming, yet it's not a state. And its per capita federal taxes are very high. I'm going to give you that because I looked that up too. Because I expected someone to call me with the argument that, well, you would disadvantage the small states by doing that. And no. Okay, so what we have here is, this is taxes paid per capita. And this is the case for why DC should be a state. But it'll probably be, the Republicans will probably fight that till the very death, because the likelihood is that the District of Columbia would have 2 senators that would more than likely be Democrats. But just look at this. The per capita taxes paid in Washington, D.C., $10,517. That's in D.C. Yet they don't have a chance to have total self-determination. Second is Connecticut with $10,363. Massachusetts, on a per capita tax basis, $9,793, and New York, $9,078. And look, here's Wyoming, $6,936. And yet, Washington, D.C. is not an independent state. And that is long, long overdue. Again, phone number is 340-1590. That's 340-1590. And let's go to indictment number 4. But here's one of the things that I really wish. I know I have a lot of conservative listeners. I wish I could understand what makes you continue to support him in light of all of the legal woes that he currently faces, in light of all the allegations that are against him. If you could tell me that, I would greatly appreciate it. 340-1590. I'd like to know why do you still support him? Because to me, it almost defies logic that his popularity is getting stronger with every indictment, other than the fact that you are just making a statement you don't want anybody telling you who to support. But I don't know. I really would love to hear what your reasoning is for continuing to support him, because the poll came out the other day after the indictment in Georgia, and his poll numbers are up. So again, that number is 340-1590. That's 340-1590. I haven't had anybody call up and give me a good fight tonight. And you know I enjoy that. And I'm prepared for you, because I looked up this federal tax thing because I was expecting somebody to call up and say, well, the small states would be thoroughly disadvantaged. Well, can you imagine where this country would be if we didn't have California and New York and Florida and Texas? They're the ones providing all the revenue for what needs to be done to keep our country up. So should they have an outsized say in the election process? I think so. They do by virtue of their congressional representatives. They have more congressional representatives than other states because of the size of the population. But they still only have 2 senators. And I think that's the balancing point that the forefathers thought about to try to make for a more balanced and equitable situation. And I think that they pretty effectively have done that by using 2 senators. But what I'm more interested in, and I had made a statement to a conservative guy I used to be friends with, which we are no more, because of the tribalism, that I thought there would be a major move to try to make Washington, D.C. a state after some of the things that they've done with the Supreme Court. But it's been pretty quiet on the Western Front. And I would also say on this situation with the Supreme Court, and namely Clarence Thomas, it's a pure disgrace. He is tarnishing the integrity of the Supreme Court, and I think that's tragic. I really do. I think that's tragic. He and Alito, they are tarnishing the integrity of the Supreme Court. I don't know. And all of this is because we are in our tribes. And no one wants to give quarter. Everyone thinks they're right. And thus we have an impasse. But even far back as 1787, they had an impasse with how to elect a president. But somehow they got in a room and they were able to come up with a compromise for how to conduct a presidential election. One of the other examples I like to use that's very important to me when I first read it was Antonin Scalia and Ruth Bader Ginsburg were best of friends. And you don't go to any further polar opposites than Scalia and Ginsburg. So how is that? I would suggest to you that's because there was a mutual respect for the other person's position, because they both are fact-based people. Now, here's I want to get you to get this here, because there might be somebody listening here that will want to throw that in my face. But what I want you to understand about mutual respect means, to me, that you can both come to the table with a set of issues that are fact-based and come to a different conclusion. Now, coming to the table with conspiracy theories or hyperbole or suppositions, and then you're trying to make that point stick, that doesn't work. Because that is, for me personally, that offends me, because you are not coming to me straight when I want to hear about facts. And if you give me facts, I am more than happy to debate you and talk to you about issues that are factual related. For example, this Biden crime family, I want to barf every time I hear that, because there's not been one shred of evidence produced thus far that shows that Joe Biden had any dealings with his son's business. It's simply a tactic used by the right to smudge him and to damage his character, wherein there is no evidence of any wrongdoing on his part. Now, has Hunter Biden done some wrongdoing? Yeah. Hunter Biden is in the legal system, and he's having to deal with some of his past behavior and some of his past actions. But just think about that. The other situation I can think about is Tip O'Neill could go to Ronald Reagan, and they could smoke a cigar, drink a glass of scotch. I know when Reagan was in the hospital, Tip went there to visit him. Those are days gone by, and we just don't have those. And now, unfortunately, not so much on the Democratic side, because I haven't seen it. If a Democrat is willing to have a discussion or compromise with a Republican, I have not seen that makes the Democratic outcast. With Republicans, if they are making an attempt to try to compromise or to come to a conclusion on a piece of legislation, they're seen as outcasts. You got to stick to the party line. That's it. There's no wavering. no vacillation. You have to stay strictly to the Republican Party line. And if not, you will be roundly criticized. And how could that possibly be good for our country? I've said this more times, and I know some of you are probably sick and tired of hearing me say it. I think our country is at our best when the right and the left can sit at the table and resolve an issue. I think we've had some of our greatest pieces of legislation because that was able to happen. But in today's environment, that's not possible. Biden has done yeoman's work getting done some of the things that he's done, just the infrastructure alone. Our infrastructure is falling apart. We one time the greatest infrastructure on planet Earth. And now our infrastructure was falling apart, but he fortunately has been able to get that passed. And that, believe it or not, there was some bipartisanship there. But I'd like to thank you so much for listening to the African American scene, and be aware that this was our first week of Black Facts. We'll be back with Black Facts again next week. I'd like to thank you for listening to the African American scene. God bless and be safe. And I will see you next Wednesday right here for the African American scene.
The African American scene, Wednesday evenings in the 6 o'clock hour. Brought to you by Rudy's Health Insurance and Martin County Roofing. This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.